It was supposed to be a perfect day, Josh's 10th birthday, filled with laughter, cake, and 12 people singing. But when his mother looked at the photo afterward, only 11 guests were visible. No one remembered who the 12th had been. 2 days later, Josh vanished without a trace. What began as a celebration would unravel into a mystery no one in their quiet Oregon town could explain. It had been a perfect Sunday, the kind that hung in memory like the last warm breeze of summer before autumn set in. Emily Grant stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing off the last frosting from the mixing bowls, her fingers still sticky with the pink and blue icing she had let Josh smear all over his cake. Sunlight spilled lazily through the day windows of their home, nestled in the quiet hills outside Portland, Oregon. Outside, the backyard still bore traces of balloons tied to fence posts and glitter scattered across the wooden deck like the remnants of laughter. Josh had just turned 10. 10 years of messy shoelaces, pancake mornings, and now double digits. He was growing, faster than Emily could keep up with. But today wasn't about bittersweet reflections, it had been a celebration. Friends and family had come, 12 guests, precisely. Close connect, familiar faces. Aunts, uncles, cousins, a few neighbors. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing strange, or so she thought. Later that evening, while Josh curled up with his new comic books and Thomas, her husband, folded up the last of the chairs, Emily sat on the living room couch and opened her phone. She had taken over 30 photos, but one stood out, the candle-blowing moment. It had that perfect cinematic feel, the soft golden light, Josh leaning forward, cheeks puffed, the cake glowing with 10 flickering candles. Behind him, the group stood in a gentle curve, smiles frozen mid-chair. She counted them. Once, twice, 11 people. Her brow furrowed. That couldn't be right. She remembered vividly 12 people had sung happy birthday. She had passed out 12 party horns, 12 plates had been cleaned, stacked by the sink. She opened the video clip from the same moment. Voices sang, unmistakably layered. She paused it, rewound, turned the volume up. Definitely 12 voices. A beat later, the camera panned across the room, and again, 12 people were in the frame. But in the photo, only 11. Her heart fluttered. She zoomed in. There, just behind Josh, between Aunt Karen and Mr. Davis from next door, stood a shape. A figure that didn't quite look right. They were facing forward, but their features were blurry. Not out-of-focus blurry, more like smeared, smudged, as if someone had tried to paint over their face in haste. The clothes were odd, too, a dark hoodie put up, even though it had been 75 degrees and sunny all day. Thomas, Emily called, trying to keep her voice light, but it quivered. He came in, drying his hands. "Check this out," she said, handing him the phone. "Does anything steam off to you?" He squinted. "It's a good shot. Count them." He hesitated, then frowned. 11. There were 12, he exhaled, then waved it off. Maybe someone stepped out right before the flash? Kids get restless. No one stepped out right before the flash. Kids get restless. No one stepped out right before the flash. 12 people, I counted, Thomas shrugged. Could be a trick of the light, but she wasn't convinced. Later that night, unable to sleep, Emily sat at her desk and opened the photo in a basic editing tool. She adjusted the contrast. The shape behind Josh became sharper but not clearer. The face stayed wrong, too long, too pale. It didn't match anyone they knew. Worse, something else began to unsettle her. The position. The figure's hand, almost touching Josh's shoulder, fingers outstretched, but not quite making contact. Frozen mid-motion. She looked at the other pictures. In none of them did this person appear. Only in the one shot, right as Josh blew out the candles. The most intimate, most focused moment. The next morning, Josh came downstairs, rubbing his eyes. "Mom," he asked. "At my party." He stood next to me during the cake. He smelled like oranges. Her breath caught. "Do you know him?" Josh shook his head. "He said he was a friend of Dad's. Said he'd see me next year." She stared at her son, heart pounding. "Did you tell Dad?" Josh shrugged. "I thought you invited him." Emily turned away, biting her lip. The figure, the voice, the promise. See me next year. By midweek, she had emailed the photo to a friend in digital forensics at the university. The reply came within hours. Not edited, not tampered, no metadata manipulation. But that face, Emily, I ran it through recognition software. It doesn't match any of your guests, or anyone in public databases. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about one thing: 12 voices, 11 faces, and a boy who didn't know he had just shaken hands with a ghost. Emily hadn't brought up the strange figure in the hoodie again since the night of Josh's birthday. Not to Thomas, not to Josh. She told herself it was nothing, a mistake in the photo, an illusion, but the image remained burned into her mind. The outstretched hand, the blurred face, the way it stood too close behind Josh like it belonged there. A week later, while having coffee with her friend Claire, one of the moms from the school carpool group, Emily casually scrolled through her phone to show off pictures from the party. Claire laughed at the image of Josh smearing cake on his face, cooed over the decorations, then stopped at the candle photo. Her expression changed subtly, tapping the screen. Emily felt her stomach tighten. "Who?" she asked, though she already knew. Claire zoomed in and pointed. "The guy in the hoodie. I didn't see him there that day, and you know me, I always notice a new face." Emily forced a laugh. "Yeah, we're not really sure. Might have been a neighbor's teenage kid dropping by." You know how chaotic things get, but Claire didn't laugh. "It's just odd. He doesn't seem to be looking at the camera. He's looking at Josh." "Like, directly?" That night, once Josh had gone to bed and Thomas was in the garage tinkering with his workbench, Emily sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and a growing sense of unease. She opened the folder of saved videos from the birthday party. She clicked through each clip, reviewing the footage from multiple angles. Phone videos from guests, the GoPro she'd mounted near the cake, even the overhead camera she had installed last year for backyard security. In every video, the moment was consistent. Cheers, candles, Josh's grin, but in none of them could she clearly make out the figure in the hoodie. Either the man had somehow positioned himself just outside the angle of every other recording device, or he hadn't been there at all. She replayed the cake video, frame by frame. 11 people clapping, cheering, smiling. Then, for half a second, as the camera moved slightly, a shadow, tall, unmoving, appeared in the corner behind Josh. Emily paused, rewound, froze the frame. The figure didn't move with the rest. It stood like a statue, hands at its side, hood up. When the camera shifted again, it was gone. She leaned back, heart racing. There was one place she hadn't checked: the front door security feed. Their home system was linked to a cloud server, and it automatically stored motion-sensed clips for up to 30 days. She logged in, entered the date, and scrubbed through the timeline. The party had started at 2:00 p.m. She checked the window from 1:30 to 3:00. She expected to see guests arriving, children darting across the lawn, the pizza guy maybe. But strangely, the only footage from that entire block of time was from 1:42 p.m., Emily's mother entering with a birthday gift, and then nothing until nearly 3:17 p.m., when the neighbors left with their twin boys. There were no other alerts, no recordings, no footage of a man in a hoodie arriving or leaving. Emily double-checked the doorbell camera and the driveway feed. Same result. It was as if the man had never entered through the front at all. But there were no side entrances, no gates left open. The backyard was fenced and locked. Her heart pounded as she realized something even more unnerving. During that half hour of missing footage, she herself had been in and out of the kitchen multiple times. She hadn't noticed anything. Neither had Thomas. No one mentioned a guest they didn't recognize. So how had someone managed to get in, stay unseen, appear in one photo, and only one, and vanish? Emily ran a diagnostic on the security system, checking for gaps or errors. Everything appeared normal. No connectivity issues, no firmware failures. The system had simply not recorded. The next morning, while Josh was at school, Emily sat in the hallway outside his room, staring at the family photos hanging there. Pictures from camping trips, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings. She noticed something in one photo from a trip to Cannon Beach 2 years ago. In the far background, near the rocks by the water, was a silhouette. Hooded. Alone. Facing their direction, she blinked and leaned in closer, but the figure was too far away to confirm. Was she imagining it? She checked more pictures. One from the zoo last spring. Another shadowy figure in the crowd near the elephant enclosure, half obscured, always at a distance, always just barely visible. She didn't want to believe it, but a thought crept into her mind, terrifying in its implication. What if this wasn't the first time the man had been near Josh? What if he'd been following them, watching them for years? Emily felt her throat tighten. She snapped a photo of the birthday picture on her phone and sent it to a local private investigator she'd worked with briefly during a neighborhood theft issue last year. "Do you recognize this man? Was at my son's party. No one remembers inviting him. He doesn't appear on any video except this photo. I need answers," the PI replied within an hour. "Send me more context. Where and when. I'll dig in." Later that afternoon, Emily's phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from the PI. "Hey Emily, weird thing, your image tripped a partial match in a federal database. But not for a person. For a cold case, 2015, disappearances, child abduction, Portland Metro. I'm still pulling records. We'll update soon." Emily's hand trembled as she hit replay, listening again. Cold case, child abduction, a man in a hoodie, a vanished child. And now that same figure standing behind her son. That night, as the wind howled outside and the old maple tree scraped against their window, Emily lay awake, staring into the darkness. Her mind looped with questions, none of which she wanted to answer. It started like any other afternoon. Tuesday, mid-September, the air crisp with the early breath of fall, golden leaves spiraling down the street as children laughed and pedaled along the sidewalks after school. Emily had given Josh permission to ride his bike around the block, just like he always did, with strict instructions to be back before the sun touched the treetops. She remembered his little wave, his voice cheerful, and she remembered the silence that followed. At first she thought nothing of it. Time passed quickly when she was preoccupied. Dishes needed washing, laundry folded. By the time she glanced at the clock and saw 5:03 p.m. blinking on the oven, a thin ripple of concern ran through her. She stepped onto the porch, scanned the street, driver. Her voice echoed down the empty block. "Josh?" The neighbors' houses sat still and indifferent, blinds drawn against the setting sun. Her worry morphed into urgency. She texted Thomas. No reply. She grabbed her jacket and began walking the loop Josh usually took. At the end of the cul-de-sac, under the old elm tree near the mailboxes, she saw it. Josh's bike. Lying on its side, one handlebar bent oddly inward, back wheel still spinning faintly like a clock winding down. No Josh. No backpack, just the bike, and a small scuff mark on the sidewalk that looked too deep to be from a kid's sneaker. Emily's lungs squeezed tight. She screamed his name, louder this time, drawing the attention of a woman walking her dog across the street. Within minutes, she had dialed 911. By the time Thomas arrived, police were canvassing the area. Emily could barely breathe as she recounted every moment, what Josh wore, how long he had been gone, when she last saw him. She showed them the bike. They took photos, notes, reassurances. "Kids wander off," one officer said gently, too gently. "He might have followed a friend home. We'll find him." But Emily knew. Josh wouldn't just leave his bike. He loved that bike. He had decorated it with stickers from his favorite comic book and gave it a name, Red Thunder. He wouldn't leave Red Thunder for anything unless he was forced to. The hours crawled into nightfall. Thomas worked with officers to search nearby streets while Emily stayed home in case Josh returned. At 1:17 a.m. a detective returned with a laptop, ramped up as he suddenly opened 4 walls along the graveled path front. "Mrs. Grant," he said, his voice grim. "We pulled footage from a traffic cam at the entrance of the neighborhood." The footage was grainy, slightly askew, time-stamped 4:48 p.m. It showed Josh riding toward the intersection at a steady pace, alone. Seconds later, a tall figure in a dark jacket and a baseball cap appeared from the left side of the frame. The man didn't run, he simply walked straight up to Josh and placed a hand on his shoulder. Josh stopped. No struggle, no signs of panic. He simply dismounted the bike, and the man took his hand. Together, they walked off-screen toward a street that led to a dead end. "Wait," Emily whispered. "Where's he taking him?" The detective clicked to the next file. A second camera mounted on a private residence showed the same street, though the angle was obstructed by tree branches. At 4:54 p.m., a dark SUV came into view, parked on the curb. The figure in the baseball cap opened the rear door, and Josh climbed in. The man followed. The SUV pulled away. Emily squinted. "Can you enhance the plate?" The detective grimaced. "We tried. It's been intentionally obscured. The pixels blur unnaturally, as if the video was manipulated or—" "Jammed?" Thomas repeated. "You mean like scrambled?" "More or less. Could be some kind of reflective plate coating or jamming tech. We've seen it before in cases involving planned objections." Emily collapsed onto the couch, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear herself think. "He didn't scream. He didn't resist," she murmured. "Why didn't he fight?" "He might have known the person," the detective offered cautiously, "or trusted them." That word pierced through Emily like ice. Trusted. Josh had said someone came to his party, someone who smelled like oranges, someone he thought was a friend of his dad. "Can we trace the SUV? Any way to ID the driver?" Thomas asked, his voice strained but determined. The detective nodded. "We're pulling feeds from nearby intersections, hoping to get a clearer shot, but whoever this was, they were careful. Very careful." As the investigation escalated, so did the tension. FBI agents were brought in. The Grants' home was scanned top to bottom. Josh's room became a gallery of clues. His tablet, his drawings, even a sticky note on his nightstand that read, "Orange Man said he'd come back." He did. Emily froze when she found it. Her hands shook as she showed it to the agents. "He remembered him," she whispered. "From the party. From before that, maybe?" "We'll need to go through his online activity," the lead agent said. "Messages, apps, anything that might reveal prior contact." But Josh didn't have social media. His tablet history was clean, no suspicious messages, no online lures. Whoever took him had done so in person, direct, deliberate. Over the next 48 hours, the story made local news, then regional, then national. Boy vanishes in quiet Oregon suburbs. Friends, family, strangers joined search efforts. Flyers were printed, volunteers organized. Tips came in, dozens of them, none credible. Emily barely slept, barely ate. Her phone never left her hand. Each ring sent a jolt of hope. Each silence crushed it. Then, on the third night, the detective called. "We found something," he said. Emily's heart stopped. The detective's voice was taut with restrained urgency as he relayed the new information over the phone. Emily, a white panel van was spotted on a surveillance camera about 2 blocks from the intersection where Josh was last seen. It was parked at the edge of the gravel clearing near Foster Park, time-stamped exactly 4:44 p.m., 6 minutes before the SUV footage. It stayed there for 27 minutes, then left. No license plates, no visible driver, and nobody was seen entering or exiting the vehicle. Emily gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, the veins in her hands taut as wires. So what does that mean? Was it the same vehicle? Was it involved? "We can't say for sure yet," the detective admitted, "but the van showing up just before the SUV, the location, the timing, it's too close to be coincidence." Thomas stood across from her, phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated with FBI field agents and media liaisons. Their house had transformed into a command center. Maps pinned on the dining room wall, red strings tracing Josh's last known movements, folders labeled witness interviews, vehicle sightings, neighborhood sightings. But it was Emily, not the agents, who stumbled onto the next break. Late that night, unable to sleep, she sat alone in Josh's room. His small desk lamp glowed over scattered Lego pieces and a crumpled superhero drawing. Her eyes drifted to Red Thunder, the bike that now leaned silently in the hallway outside. Something clicked. A tech from the earlier investigation had mentioned that newer models of Josh's tracker, installed discreetly by Thomas last Christmas, synced GPS logs to their family cloud. She opened Thomas's old laptop, accessed the GPS software, and typed in the date, September 14th. A map loaded. Tiny blue dots traced a route beginning from their driveway, looping around the block, then veering southeast toward the park. The last signal was recorded at 4:50 p.m., right where they had found the bike. But that wasn't the end of it. Another tab blinked, Historical Movement Preview. She clicked it. The system revealed an auxiliary ping, brief but clear, at 5:14 p.m. from a location farther south. It shouldn't have been possible. If Josh had been taken, how did the bike tracker ping again half an hour later and miles away from the original location? unless it had been transported with him. The coordinates pointed to an area along Wen Hollow Road near the industrial edge of the county. She cross-referenced it with the county's property map. The result sent a shiver down her spine. Parcel 17B, abandoned residential lot, no utilities, no official owners listed in the last 7 years. She didn't wait for morning. By 6:45 a.m., Emily had printed the map, slipped on her boots, and driven alone toward the desolate stretch of road. Fog hung low, the early sun barely slicing through the trees that clustered like silent sentinels along the cracked asphalt. The GPS led her to a narrow dirt path veiled behind overgrown brush. A wooden gate stood crookedly ajar, half buried in vines. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it open, the hinges groaning softly in protest. The house, or what remained of it, emerged like a ghost from the mist. Weather-worn siding peeled from its skeletal frame. The windows' pornage sagged inward, swallowed by time and rot. She stepped carefully inside. Dust blanketed everything like snow. Animal tracks littered the floor. Cobwebs hung like veils from the ceiling corners. At first glance, the house seemed empty. Until she saw the footprint. It was small, fresh, pressed into a patch of fine dirt near what used to be the living room. And next to it, half buried in the debris, was something unmistakable. A child's sneaker. Her breath hitched. She dropped to her knees, yanked it free. Red with a white stripe, size 2, the left shoe, Josh's. She staggered back, gasping, clutching the shoe to her chest like a lifeline. That's when her eyes caught another glint of color behind a splintered door that hung partially open to a back room. She pushed it open and froze. On the floor, surrounded by a scattering of old newspapers and broken tiles, lay a crumpled piece of foil. She stepped closer, heart in her throat. It was a cake wrapper, the kind she'd used at the party. Same blue polka dot print, same fold style. She knelt down and picked it up. A corner was torn, smudged with something that looked like frosting, or maybe just time-stained dirt. She pulled out her phone and took photos of everything. The shoe, the wrapper, the footprint. Then, hands shaking, she called the detective. "They had him here," she whispered into the phone. "He was in this house." Within an hour, the property was crawling with local officers, FBI agents, forensic teams. Emily stood outside the gate, wrapped in a blanket, moved silently as men in gloves and masks moved through the structure, cameras flashing. The detective approached her, face grim. "You did the right thing, Emily. If he was here, we'll find more." Emily said nothing. Her eyes locked on the house, a boiling mix of rage and hope churning inside her. Thomas arrived shortly after, pulling her into his arms without a word. Inside the house, one of the agents called out, "We've got something." Another shoe, a strand of hair. A matchbook from a motel 60 miles away. Emily turned sharply. "What motel?" Emily's blood ran cold as she whispered, "That's not random. That's a message." The sun had long dipped beneath the trees by the time Emily and Thomas returned home from the abandoned house. Though agents remained on site, combing for further evidence, Emily's mind couldn't let go of one thing, the matchbook from Crescent Pines Inn. Something about it stirred a strange familiarity, a pressure in her gut that didn't make sense. That night, while Thomas took a call in the living room with the FBI liaison, Emily went into their bedroom and sat silently at the edge of the bed, still clutching Josh's sneaker like a relic. Her eyes swept across the room until they landed on the wooden dresser near Thomas's desk. A memory resurfaced, years ago, during a house. He'd called it just boring financial stuff. Back then, she hadn't cared, but now, a whisper of doubt began to creep through her thoughts. She walked over, pulled open the drawer, and found the box still there, heavy and cold. It required a combination. She paused. Thomas had a habit, using Josh's birthday for everything. She dialed in 914. The latch clicked. Inside, the air smelled of aged paper and steel. She froze as the contents came into view. Not financial papers, not bonds, instead file folders, neatly organized. On top was a manila envelope labeled simply, CR Unit, Declassified. Her fingers moved quickly, heart hammering. The first page bore a logo she didn't recognize, but the heading read, Children in Risk Task Force, Field Reports 20102015. She flipped to the next page. Photos, some in color, some grainy black and white. Children, mostly boys, faces bruised, eyes red, some staring blankly at the lens. Next to each photo was a summary, name sometimes redacted, date of recovery, location. One name caught her eye. J.M., male, approx. 6 inches, extracted from abandoned motel in Crescent Pines. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She turned another page. Handwritten notes, surveillance logs, camera ID timestamps. Then a separate folder, thicker, labeled Personal Record, Confidential. Inside were printouts of what appeared to be home security camera feeds, like their current system, but older. The footage wasn't from their house. It showed various suburban driveways, apartment hallways, playgrounds. Each frame, time-stamped, notes like subject in frame, pattern matched, and behavior consistent with pre-abduction model. Emily's skin crawled. Was Thomas studying other families? Stalking? She flipped further and found a stack of medical records. They bore no patient names, just initials, AD, LL, KT, and diagnostic codes, malnutrition, trauma response, behavioral regression. Her hands trembled. Just as she reached the bottom of the pile, the door creaked open behind her. Thomas's voice, low and tired, cut through the room. "You weren't supposed to find that." Emily turned slowly. "What is this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Thomas didn't answer immediately. He closed the door gently, then crossed the room and sank into the chair opposite her. "It was a long time ago," he began, eyes fixed on the box, not her. "Before we moved here, before Josh, I was part of a field response team, covert work. We operated under a joint task force, public preface, preferred to take on large-scale operations, rescue and recovery." Emily stared. "You never said anything." "I couldn't," he said. "We signed NDAs so binding they might as well have been blood. Even after I left, I wasn't allowed to talk about it." She held up the photos. "This isn't just intelligence work. You surveilled children, families." Thomas's jaw clenched. "To catch the people watching them, the predators. They don't hunt in the shadows like in movies. They blend in. Schools, neighborhoods, soccer practices. We had to get ahead of them." Emily's fingers tightened around the edge of a file. "And the medical records?" "Kids we rescued," he said quietly. "Some too young to remember who they were. No parents ever claimed them. Some did quite well. Too young to remember who they were. No parents except." Emily's voice cracked. "And the name, Crescent Pines." "That's where they're holding Josh now, isn't it?" Thomas looked up. For the first time, his eyes were rimmed with moisture. "I don't know, but I've seen that motel before. It was a trafficking point we shut down in 2014. The operation was classified. We recovered 3 kids that night. I helped carry one of them out. That matchbook in the house, it's not random. Whoever took Josh is tying this back to me. This is personal." Emily sat in stunned silence, pieces clicking together. "You think this has something to do with you leaving the team?" "Maybe," he said. "Maybe someone we didn't catch, or someone who blamed me for shutting them down. I left after one op went sideways. A child disappeared before we got there. The agency said I'd been compromised. Pulled me out. Said my face had gotten too familiar." He paused. "I started over. With you. I burned it all down and buried it. I thought it was over." Emily's voice was tight. "But it wasn't." Thomas looked away. "No, and now they're punishing me." Emily shoved the files back into the box, slamming the lid closed. "You need to tell the FBI everything." "They already know I worked in counter-trafficking," he said, "but not this." "Then tell them this. Use it. If this is personal, then you're the key." Thomas nodded slowly. "They ask why I kept it all hidden, why I didn't warn them." "Then be honest," she snapped. "Because now our son is gone." Thomas stood up, moved toward the hallway, but paused at the door. "Emily, there's something else. Someone I knew on the team. Someone who disappeared after that last mission. His name was Cameron Hale." "And?" she asked. "He's the one who ran that last op in Crescent Pines," Thomas said quietly. "And if he's alive, he might be the one behind all of this." 2 days after Thomas's admission, the FBI brought in a digital forensics expert to analyze the limited camera footage from the neighborhood intersection where Josh was last seen. The tech, a sharp-eyed analyst named Renner, specialized in AI-driven image reconstruction. His job was to take blurred, low-res images and make them speak. She sat at the far end of the conference table, her fingers interlaced tightly in her lap, trying not to look at the frozen stills from the video they had watched over and over again. The figure in the baseball cap, the one who gently took Josh's hand and led him out of the frame, remained a phantom, a silhouette with just enough detail to haunt her every waking moment. Renner adjusted the color contrast, applied heat mapping, ran the footage through pattern extrapolation algorithms. The process took hours, during which Thomas paced in the hallway and agents rotated in and out, whispering updates. At precisely 3:07 p.m., Renner's voice cut the room into silence. "I've got something." Everyone leaned in. He pulled up a side-by-side comparison. On the left was the enhanced still from the footage, grainy but no longer faceless. A sun-weathered man in his late 40s with narrow eyes and a jagged scar over his left brow. On the right, a DMV photo from 2016. Same man, a name printed beneath it in black letters: Gavin Rusk. Renner tapped the screen. Known to Texas authorities, suspected in 3 abduction cases, none confirmed. In each incident, the children were either recovered later with no memory or the evidence was too circumstantial for arrest. Emily felt her heart slam against her ribs. "What's he doing in Oregon?" "That's the thing," statement said. "He went off-grid in 2018. No property, no credit activity, no phone, but here's the part you're going to want to see." He clicked another tab. "Facial telemetry puts him at 92% match with your video. But look at this." He zoomed in on Gavin's neck. There was a tattoo barely visible, partially covered by his shirt. "That mark," Renner continued, "belongs to a defunct private security group called Roxton Response. They worked internationally, dissolved quietly after an investigation into trafficking collusion overseas." Emily shot Thomas a look. He nodded grimly. "Roxton handled field extraction in the Middle East. Some of our guys were ex-extraction. You ever meet him?" Agent asked. "No," Thomas said. "But that name, I've seen it, on an internal list of contractors we were told not to work with." Renner turned back to the monitor. "So here's where it gets worse. We searched Gavin Rusk's online trace, and while the man himself doesn't post, he has digital shadows. One of his known aliases was linked to a profile that interacted with a lifestyle blogger on Instagram in 2020. That blogger was you, Emily." Emily blinked. "What?" "You posted a series of backyard renovation photos. Someone under the name K. White Hiker commented 3 times, once about the fence paint, once about the flower bed, and once on a picture of Josh playing with the dog." Renner clicked over to a screenshot of her old post. The comment stood out in blue text. "That boy's got the happiest smile. Cherish these years, they go fast." A chill crawled up her spine. "I thought it was just a random dad." "We traced the IP," Renner said. "It bounced through a VPN, but it originated in West Texas. That matches the last confirmed location of Gavin Rusk before he disappeared." Emily's voice shook. "He made a digital footprint intentionally subtle," Renner replied. "Just enough to mark you." "Then he waited." "Waited for what?" Thomas asked. "For your guard to drop." Renner looked at them carefully. "Or maybe he was waiting until your past came full circle." A silence hung in the room like smoke. Then Emily said, "He knew Thomas was CIR. He knew where to hit him." "Maybe," Emily asked. "Look at the messaging," the agent continued. "The matchbook, the photo. Whoever took Josh is staging something. It's not just a snatch and hide. It's a performance." "A message aimed at both of you?" Renner nodded. "I pulled metadata from your post, Emily. That comment came exactly 3 years to the day before Josh's 10th birthday, and the way the account followed and unfollowed your page timed almost ritualistically. Every September?" "You're saying this was premeditated 3 years ago?" Thomas asked. "At least," Renner replied. "Probably longer." Emily stood up, pacing. "He's not working alone. Someone else is feeding him details. Maybe someone from the old unit. Someone who knew Thomas's patterns, Josh's name, our address." One of the agents leaned forward. "It's possible there's a leak, a ghost in the files. We'll reopen CIR's old employee network, start cross-referencing names." Wren spoke again. One more thing, I scraped archived footage from a news piece covering Crescent Pines back in 2014. There's a freeze swing during the live broadcast. Look closely. He clicked to zoom in. In the background, standing beyond the caution tape, was a man with a camera, hoodie up, face tilted away. But now, after everything, they could see the pattern, the stance, the profile. That's him, Thomas. He's recreating something. Something that started at Crescent Pines. Emily pressed her palms against her eyes. He's rebuilding it, scene by scene, and Josh is the centerpiece. The 20th morning since Josh disappeared broke with a gray, hollow light that barely filtered through the bedroom curtains. Emily hadn't slept, not really. Her nights blurred into shallow dozes haunted by the same dream. Josh standing in the middle of a room without walls, his mouth moving, but no sound coming out. She would reach for him, but he would vanish just before she touched his hand. She had stopped counting cups of coffee. Thomas had grown more silent with each passing day, speaking only when prompted, retreating into a shell that no longer cracked even in front of the agents. That morning, Emily had just stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around her shoulders, but her phone rang. Unknown number. Normally she let those go to voicemail, but something inside her told her to answer. The voice on the other end was low and calm, spoken with the unnerving cadence of someone reciting something long memorized. It was a man. Just one sentence. 10th birthday, last one, and then the call ended. No static, no click, just gone. Her blood went cold. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the bathroom floor with a sharp crack. She stood frozen for a moment before rushing into the bedroom. Thomas was at the window, arms crossed. She gripped his arm. "He called," she gasped. "Who?" "I don't know. Someone. He said," she swallowed, "10th birthday, last one." "What does that mean?" Emily's voice was raw. "He's telling us it's over, that Josh won't—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Thomas grabbed the phone from the floor, dialing the FBI field agent in charge. Within the hour, agents had filled their living room again, gathering voice logs, scanning the call metadata, triangulating the origin. The number had been bounced through a spoofing app and routed through multiple towers, but they managed to pull one location of origin, a motel landline in northern Idaho, Crescent Birch Inn, a roadside place just off Route 41 near the Montana border. By mid-afternoon, a team had descended on the location. The clerk at the front desk, a young woman named Shara, confirmed that the room the call had come from had been rented out for one night, paid in cash. No ID. The man gave a name, David Hale, but it wasn't real. Surveillance footage showed him wearing a ball cap and sunglasses, his back to the camera. He checked in at 2:13 p.m. and left by 6:40 a.m. the next morning. The agent swept the room with luminol and found smudges of blood near the sink and along the doorframe. A toothbrush, a strand of hair, a single Band-Aid wrapper with a small rust-colored stain. The samples were rushed to a field lab. The results returned within 48 hours. The blood was Josh's. Emily was in the kitchen trying to focus on something as mundane as slicing fruit when the call came. She picked up the phone with shaking hands, the voice of the lead agent heavy with regret. "It's a partial match," he said, "enough to confirm presence, but we can't determine timeline or severity. There wasn't a lot of blood. Could have been a cut, a nosebleed, we don't know." Emily sat down slowly, the knife still in her hand. "But it means he was there." "Yes," the agent said, "he was." "Then where is he now?" she asked. Silence stretched on the other end. "We're working on it." The motel room had been wiped clean otherwise. No clothes, no fingerprints, no food wrappers. The trash had been emptied, every surface sterilized. Except for one thing. In the corner of the room, behind the dresser, an agent found something folded into a square. It was a page torn from a child's composition notebook. The top corner had a sticker, Captain Blaze, Josh's favorite cartoon character. And in the center, written in thick blue marker, was a message. "Mom, I heard him say your name. I'm trying to be brave." Emily didn't cry. She stared at the note for a long time, fingers pressed to her lips, then folded it gently and placed it in her wallet. The name David Hale gnawed at Thomas. It felt intentional, not a random alias. That evening, as they combed through his old files again, he stumbled upon a personnel index from CIR. Hale, he said suddenly. Cameron Hale. He was on my team. Disappeared during that Mexico op I told you about. The one that went bad? Emily asked. He nodded. Everyone thought he was killed in the crossfire, but the body they found, it was never confirmed. DNA was inconclusive. We moved on. You think he faked it? Thomas exhaled slowly. If anyone could have done it, it was him. He was brilliant, quiet, always 2 steps ahead, but he started questioning the mission near the end. Said we were treating the kids like evidence, not people. He blamed you, Emily said, the realization dawning. He blamed you for not saving one of them. Thomas nodded. And now he's making me feel it. The FBI expanded their manhunt to include Cameron Hale as a suspect. A new task force began piecing together every old mission file connected to Thomas, cross-referencing every raid, every child recovered, every operative who might have turned. Emily watched as their living room turned into a web of connections, each thread leading further away from the present and deeper into the past. 3 days after the phone call from Idaho and the subsequent discovery of Josh's note, another thread unraveled from the past. The FBI received word from a field team in Utah that a coordinated raid on an isolated ranch just outside Moab had led to the rescue of a missing child, an 8-year-old boy named Mason Guerrero, who had vanished from his Arizona neighborhood nearly 4 months earlier. The boy was found malnourished but alive, locked in a windowless back room disguised as a utility shed. He had been kept under sedation for long periods and was wearing the same clothes he had disappeared in. His captors were gone, vanished hours before the raid, leaving only the child, a few blood-streaked walls, and a mattress that smelled of disinfectant and urine. Emily and Thomas were called immediately when Mason began speaking to child psychologists and agents. In his statements, he described the layout of the place, the sound of distant trucks, the smell of dust and meat, possibly a slaughterhouse nearby. But what made everyone's pulse spike was what he said about the other room. There was a boy next door, Mason had whispered to the doctor. I didn't see him, but I heard him. His name was Josh. Emily nearly collapsed when the agent read those words aloud. Mason had overheard a man talking to the boy, calling him son in a deep, eerie voice that always softened right before bedtime. He never called Mason anything, not even boy. But Josh, he got stories, gifts, lullabies, and every night, without fail, the man would hum the same tune outside his door. It was the happy birthday song, slow, like a broken music box. Mason had learned to count the verses by rhythm. He sang it even when it wasn't Josh's birthday, the boy explained. He said it was always his birthday now, that every night was a new year with him. The psychologist asked if Josh ever responded. Mason said yes, but only at first. Then it stopped. He cried the first night. Then he didn't talk anymore, just whispered sometimes. When asked how many days ago the boy disappeared, Mason held up 3 fingers. They took him, he said, packed him up, and said, "We're going home, son." That word again, son. It pierced through Emily like a knife. The agents pressed Mason for more. Did he hear names, see faces? The boy flinched when shown photos, but when they showed him the enhanced image of Gavin Rusk, his eyes widened in fear. He nodded, trembling. That one. He brought food. He didn't like noise. Then came the second bombshell when Mason saw a photo of Cameron Hale, much younger, clean-shaven, in his CIR file. The boy's response was instant. That's the man who sings most of his fists. He's alive, he muttered. Hale's alive. And he's calling himself Josh's father. Emily leaned forward. Did he ever hurt Josh? Mason hesitated. No, I don't think so. But he wasn't normal. He dressed like a dad, made pancakes. He laughed too much. What kind of place was it? One of the agents asked. A big house? A farm? Mason shook his head. It smelled like animals, but not many people. Lots of dirt. There was a tower, a metal one. Wren pulled up geographical overlays. That could mean an oil derrick or maybe old mining equipment. Southern Utah's dotted with abandoned drill sites. We'll narrow it down. Meanwhile, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the ritual, the singing, the forced birthday. He's trying to replace someone, she whispered. Hale lost a child, or thinks he did, and now he's forcing Josh to become him. Or he's building a new life, Thomas added. Rewriting one, and Josh is the center of it. The psychologist confirmed Mason's recollections were consistent. He'd survived trauma, but his memory was sound. He remembered a dog barking at night, wind through thin walls, a generator that made the whole place shake. These were not the sounds of a basement in a city. These were rural, isolated. Emily stared at the floor, heart pounding. He's moving him. If they were there 3 days ago, they're already gone. But where? Renner asked. And why now? Emily stood up slowly. Because something's about to happen. He's been building this, planning it, and the 10th birthday. She looked at Thomas. It wasn't just symbolic, it was the beginning. Renner nodded. And Mason's testimony? That's the first crack. We've got a scent. The moment Mason mentioned the strange cadence of the lullaby, something shifted in Thomas. It had gnawed at the edge of his memory before, but now the edges sharpened. The slow, dragging rhythm, the tone slightly off-key, the breath between verses. He closed his eyes and let it echo in his mind until it crystallized. He had heard that exact rendition before, 10 years ago on a cold night in Guatemala, when his unit had breached a 2-storm adobe home believed to be a holding site for trafficked children. The operation had been chaotic. Intel came late, backup arrived even later, and amidst the chaos of gunfire and crying children, one team member vanished. Nathaniel II exercised, fragile operations trainer. The man had been a ghost in the system even back then. Nate had gone into the back room to extract a boy who wouldn't respond to anyone, and then the roof collapsed under a sudden explosion. 2 bodies were found, but one was too burned for positive ID. The file had been closed with the presumption Nate was dead, but Thomas had never truly believed it. Nate was too precise, too calculating to go out like that. Now, sitting in a cold Utah field office, staring at the printed transcript of Mason's testimony, he knew the truth. It wasn't Gavin Rusk who sang to Josh, Thomas said suddenly, breaking the silence. It is Nate. Emily looked up from the coffee she hadn't touched in over an hour. What? The singing. The happy birthday song, he said, rising from his seat. Nate used to hum to the kids during missions. He said it calmed them. Said music was memory's anchor. It was his thing. But his version, slow, deliberate, intimate. Exactly how Mason described. Renner raised an eyebrow. You're saying Behringer faked his death? He had the skills, Thomas replied, and the motive. He didn't just want to rescue children, he wanted to keep them. He hated the way the system recycled them back into foster care. Said we were putting them from one bad situation into another. Emily's voice trembled. You think he's been building a family? Yes, Thomas said, but not in any normal sense. He sees himself as a savior, taking in the forgotten ones, replacing what he lost, or thinks he lost, and now he's added Josh to his collection. The agents began digging. Nate Behringer's personnel file was reopened, redacted lines decrypted, and old emails reviewed. Renner pulled up his psychological profile. He was flagged twice for empathy overreach. Once he disappeared with a child for 6 hours during a rescue, claimed the kid needed to calm down before transport. The second time he told a mother her son was dead when he wasn't, that it was better if she moved on. The room chilled. He was preparing for this, Emily murmured. He's not working alone, Thomas added. He used to coordinate with a few off-grid contractors. Rusk must be one of them. Maybe the one who does the dirty work, but Nate, he's the face. The father, agents scanned old photos and metadata logs, looking for any trace of Behringer post-Guatemala. Nothing surfaced in the public domain, but then a hit came from a darknet forum used to report sightings of suspected trafficking rings. An anonymous post from 6 months prior, dated March, mentioned a quiet ranch family outside Elko, Nevada. The poster claimed to have seen 6 kids, all under 10, none attending school, and described a man with silver-bloused hair, always wearing gloves, humming to himself while gardening. The details struck Thomas. Nate had a skin condition, refused to touch surfaces without gloves. Build the illusion of a family, homeschool them, control them, erase their pasts. He called Josh son, Emily whispered. He's replacing someone, or he's building something he thinks is pure. A world without pain, Thomas said, without threats. And in his mind, the real threat is us. The parents. The system. The ones who didn't protect them. The task force shifted focus. A new search radius was drawn around Elko, correlating Mason's clues, metal tower, distant barking, generator hum, with possible ranches or old airfields. Satellite images revealed an isolated compound with multiple structures and a perimeter fence, tucked beneath a bluff with limited road access. Drones couldn't get close without detection. It matched too many elements to ignore. Emily stood in front of the map, her eyes fixed on the red circle marked Potential Site. "He's there," she said. "Josh is there, and he thinks he belongs now." The operation was greenlit at 4:30 a.m., under a thin veil of pre-dawn fog that settled over the Alaskan forest like a heavy breath. Coordinates obtained from a coded logbook, retrieved weeks earlier from an abandoned property in Nevada, led the FBI and Special Recovery Unit to a remote cabin built into the slope of a wooded hill north of Talkeetna. It was a structure invisible to satellite scans, its heat signature masked by dense surrounding growth and a homemade generator buried underground. On approach, drones captured images that confirmed suspicions. Clotheslines hung with small garments, 3 makeshift shelters behind the main cabin, and a handmade banner pointed over the porch reading, "Welcome home, son." They moved swiftly. No warning, no negotiation. Tactical teams breached the side door at 5:17. Flashbangs, neutralization protocols, extraction routes. It was not a rescue, it was a surgical retrieval. Inside, the air reeked of candle wax and mildew. Children's drawings covered the walls, crayon rainbows, stick figures, messy black letters spelling out family and forever. Josh was found in the second room, lying on a cot beneath a threadbare quilt, thin, pale, and curled into himself. He didn't flinch when the agents entered. He didn't even blink. "Josh Grant?" one of them asked, kneeling. The boy looked up slowly, his eyes distant but familiar. "Are you here to take me away from Dad?" he asked. It was then they knew the extent of the conditioning. The man he referred to, Nate Barringer, was already in custody, tackled outside the cabin while tending to a campfire. He had gone peacefully, even smiling, as if everything was going according to plan. Gavin Rusk had been shot during a struggle near the tree line. Josh was sedated, placed in a medical evac chopper, and flown to Anchorage, where Eleanor and Thomas waited. The reunion was not the joyous explosion of tears they had imagined for months. It was slow, tentative, like touching glass that might shatter under pressure. Josh didn't speak much the first week. He clung to a small cloth rabbit one of the other children had given him. He flinched at loud sounds. He didn't like birthday balloons. But he was alive, and over time, with therapy, care, and unyielding patience, he began to return. They were sitting in a sunlit hospital garden, and he turned to her and said, "I thought I had to stay there forever, but I didn't want to forget your voice." She held him for hours after that. Investigations into Nate Barringer's compound revealed a horrifying yet meticulous system. He had recused a total of 7 children over the years, each from a different state, each officially listed as abducted or missing, but rebranded in his records as sons and daughters. He created rituals, birthdays, bedtime stories, homemade family albums, constructing an alternate reality where he was their protector, their only safe harbor. His journals were filled with twisted affirmations. Children raised in fear must be raised again in safety. Blood does not make a parent, love and repetition do. "I am not stealing them, I am saving them from forgetfulness." He pleaded not guilty by reason of psychosis, but was declared competent for trial. The case became national news, prompting widespread reform discussions around coordination between local agencies and missing children networks. But for Emily and Thomas, none of that mattered as much as the boy sleeping again under their roof. Josh's recovery was slow but steady. His eyes were no longer distant. He reconnected with his old toys. He began school again part-time, surrounded by care professionals and a support dog named Rocket. The nightmares lingered, but so did the light. Emily learned to measure progress in moments, how he laughed when he spilled cereal, how he hummed quietly while drawing. And so came the 11th birthday. They didn't plan a party, not like before, just family, just safety. They invited only those Josh felt close to, No surprises. Emily baked the cake herself, vanilla with blue icing, and set 10 candles, plus one in the center, smaller than the rest. Josh insisted it was for the day I came back. The photo was taken in their backyard. It was quiet, golden with spring light. In the frame, Thomas, Emily, Josh, grandparents, cousins, 2 friends, the therapist, Rocket, and Emily's sister who flew in from Boston. 12 people. Exactly 12. When they looked at the photo afterward, everyone was there. No shadows, no missing faces, no unexplained figures in the background. And for the first time in a long time, Emily let herself breathe. Because the story hadn't just ended, it had been rewritten. Josh, holding a slice of cake, looked at the camera with a half smile and said, "I think I'll keep this birthday." And this time, no one disappeared. If this story gripped your heart the way it did ours, don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries that reveal the chilling truth behind the surface. What do you think about the moment Josh said, "I thought I had to stay there forever"? Which part shocked you the most? And where in the world are you watching from today? Drop a comment below. We're reading every single one.